every 4 computers now have primary control of critical vehicle functions.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Mission Control. We're going to have it's a relatively nice day here in Colorado. It looks like we've got some rain moving in across town. I can see pretty far out my windows off to the mountains. It looks like it's slowly creeping this direction, but hopefully it's nice wherever you are, even if you are stuck inside with this lovely global issue we're all dealing with. But moving along into it today, we're going to talk about triggers and timecode, and a party to that, a bit of Winamp, assuming all the demo gods have had their decided to accept all my sacrifices, and everything will actually work today. So we'll see how that works out. If not, we'll just maybe we'll do another stream. I've specifically decided to do audio triggers on a different stream on another day, as I would have to change configuration in the middle of the stream to be able to start doing some audio triggering stuff, and I would rather not overload this one stream with too much stuff. So we're just going to do that one on a separate day, but we'll go over some MIDI triggering and talk about some of the other types of triggering, and said have a good old poke there at timecode. As always, we're going to play our standard game here at Mission Control, and every time I forget to switch screens, you guys drink. Just a reminder for Friday, we're going to do, everyone's going to drink, including myself, and we're going to have special guests Brad White, and if I can pull it off, I'm going to have Ruben join us also, and we'll just have a Q&A, and we'll answer and poke and play and have fun with anything you guys want to ask on those days. So let's go ahead and get started. So let's talk about some triggers first. We're going to do the triggers first, mainly because I'm using a new trick with an NDI camera out of an iPad I have to try to show some stuff with the MIDI board. So we're going to do that first, just in case that things go funky with that. It's working right now, so let's do that first. There are some types of devices that can be used to trigger items in your show file, such as playbacks, which is useful in complex shows or when doing an automated setup. These triggers can include audio triggering, DMX triggering, MIDI triggering. Audio triggering can only be used on the Quartz and Arena consoles. It's actually no longer true for version 12 and higher. If you have a T2, you can plug that into your Quartz, your Mobile, your Sapphire, your Tiger Touch, and use it as an audio triggering source. So that's kind of handy. When setting a trigger type, it can be done in the triggers window under the system mode. Do this, hold down the Avo button and press disk. Then select the triggers on the soft keys. And I think that's all I have for slides on this one. And we'll just go over here and do it now. So I'm going to bring up the my mobile computer, which is, I'm using the Titan Go interface, but I have a Titan Mobile plugged in, and I have a T2 plugged in also for some of the timecode stuff a little bit later, and I also have a APC MPD26 hooked up. I'm using it through USB only because I don't know where my MIDI cables are. However, there's no difference between USB MIDI and plugging the MIDI straight from that into the side of your console. As far as the interface that we'll be looking at, there's no difference, so don't worry about that. So we'll kick back over here to our standard display. I'm just using the standard show file I've been using just to keep it consistent. First thing we want to do is go into our triggers menu. So if we enter system or Avo plus disk, if you are using a regular console rather than the Titan Go interface, and you then find triggers from the list, and you'll be presented with this window here. First thing we do is we could use a mapping that already existed and turn it on or off. Or we could make one of our own. We'll just go ahead and make our own to start with. So we're going to go ahead and hit the plus button for a new mapping set. And we're going to call it test. If I can actually get all the letters to type. I may have just broken my keyboard. Well, I guess we're going to go with that then for the name. And we'll hit enter. And then once we've got a new set made, we can go ahead and hit our plus button to add a trigger to it. And I want to talk about everything we see down here on our soft keys. The OK button, we would go ahead and start a level match on or off. You can have it match the level of whatever item you're using. We'll go ahead and turn that on. You set your trigger type to either hardware or item. If it's set to hardware and we were to say click this blue button on our console, it would be this blue button no matter what page we were on, no matter what was on that. That's strange. No matter what was on that fader, it would appear there every time. It'd be clicking that particular button. Whereas we have it set to item, it would pick this playback no matter where we put this playback. Or if we were using the playbacks workspace, which I don't have open right now, we'll just use one of these for our. Actually, we'll go ahead and let's exit out of here real quick and let's do a workspace window. And now my keyboard's working suddenly again. Hit playbacks, and we'll have this one open, and we'll go ahead and move it up over here. And we'll do system triggers again. And we'll make this window just a wee bit smaller so we can see that other window. So when we have it set to, we select this one and hit our plus button again. We have it set to item. When it's set to item, we can have the actions either be set level, fire at level, refire at level, flash, swap, preload, latch, set level, or loop back around to set level, sorry. We're going to do it on set level for this particular one. And then we're going to choose the item we want to do, and we'll go ahead and do this one here. After I've chosen, you can see that you select one or more items to trigger. We're just going to trigger Q11, and then we'll hit OK. And then on our soft keys, we're presented with the add button to add the trigger, our trigger type, learn on or off. We can set the MIDI channel. In this case, in MIDI, we could set. Actually, let's skip back up here and talk about these ones first. So our trigger types can be MIDI. So take MIDI signal either from UMIDI USB if it's version 12 or higher, or through the MIDI port on the side of the console on a Titan Mobile or up. With pre-version 12. Is there, let me 1 second here, see if there was a question I felt like I missed. Nope, doesn't look like it to go. Sorry about that. All right, stepping back at it. So if we can change our trigger type to, again, MIDI can be either USB MIDI for version 12 or higher, or the MIDI port on the side of the console for version 11 and up, or the old classic, actually all the way back to version probably back as far as Titan goes. We can change it to streaming ACN, so we could use streaming ACN as a trigger. So we could set say we had a different controller or even another brand's controller. We could send streaming ACN signals to this console to fire a playback. We can set its universe and its address, and we'll talk about learn in a minute. Audio triggering, if we had audio triggering set up, like I said, we'll do that in another video. We could set it to work. We set it to DMX, so you could use one of your ports on the side of the console, or the back, depending on what you're using, and have it be a DMX in, so use a turnaround, and you could have it use that as a triggering source for this playback that we're going to make work here in a moment. Trigger type GPIO. GPIO stands for General Purpose Input Output. On the Tiger Touch, the Arena, and the Sapphire Touch, they have a 1/4-inch jack on the back. It's basically a contact trigger. So you could use that to fire a playback. This is new for version either 12 or 13, I don't know which, I haven't seen this before or noticed it before. You get invert enabled and disabled, so you could have it be always closed or always open contact. A lot of times, what guys I've noticed people using the GPIO trigger for is I know there's a lot of fire protection districts nowadays that require you to have a cutoff switch, so when the fire alarm goes off, all the lighting stops. So what you could use that for on the Tiger Touch and Up is have a playback that's set to a very high priority, that basically, stops all shapes and turns everything to open white, and kind of the, a bright wash across everything, kind of the, hey, it's time to get out of here lights. So you could have that fire with that instead of having to put a cutoff switch, which just makes hard on all the equipment and all this. You could actually just put it into the console that way. And then we loop back around to MIDI. So with the MIDI here, we'll talk about the rest of our stuff moving around here. Learn on or off. You can have it automatically sense what I'm doing with the MIDI board and add that to it. We can set this particular MIDI channel that we want, the command type. We can set the value, the min level, and the max level. But since we're just going to cheat and use learn on, if I bring up one of the faders on my MIDI board, and you can see it on the learn down the side of the screen there, and I'll put it up on screen at the same time so we can all see it at once. We'll see that if I bring this fader up and down, we can see it firing on the screen. You only have to do this once. I end up doing it 3 times. I have a weird OCD about things. Once that's set, you can just hit add. And then we can do it with another one. We'll go ahead and use this one here. And just leave all other settings the same. Say OK. This time I'm going to use this MIDI button right here. You see that I've hit it and turned it off. And I can go ahead and hit add. And I'll do it again with this one. And I'll say OK. And this time I'll use one of these knobs I happen to have here. And add. And then I can exit out of my triggers menu. And now we'll see that if I bring up this fader, that playback fires. If I hit this button, that playback fires. Whoops. I don't remember what settings I put in this MPD26 here. But we can basically turn it on and off using the button. Or, since I have this one recorded as knob, I can use the knob and turn its intensity up and down. I think that's actually something funky with this one. I don't remember what that playback's supposed to do. Apparently that. So you can see what it does very simply with just triggering it like that. So I'm going to pause for a quick moment and have a sip. And see if you guys have any questions up to this point. Yes. Should I call it instead of a knob? Should I have called it a encoder pot? An encoder? Would that be a better phrase for it, there, Mr. Sam? Can it be used? I'm guessing this can be used to trigger cues in a cue list. Corey, yes, you could set a MIDI to be the go button easily enough. If I was trying to have it fire, I wouldn't necessarily set a MIDI trigger to fire a particular cue in a list of cue lists. I would probably, because then I'd have to write a macro for it and then fire the macro, and that all sounds like way more work than just recording it in the recording it as a cue in the playbacks window and just firing it that way. I think that doing it into a cue list is just more work than it would need to be, I think. Can you, Mario's asking, can you trigger playbacks from streaming ACN or ArtNet in version 11 or 12? Yes, you can do it in version 11, however, not ArtNet, only streaming ACN. It does not do ArtNet, only streaming ACN. I see Seb is also responding to Mr. Corey that, yeah, we have to do it with a macro. Like I said, that seems like way more work than it needs to be than to just fire the trigger with a just from the playbacks window like I just showed myself doing. So, Let's see here. I guess we can show it also with it. It doesn't just have to be in the playbacks, obviously. Let's set a hardware trigger for the go button. So if we go back into system menu and triggers, and we'll go ahead and add a trigger, and we'll make it hardware this time, and we'll have it be our go button, and we'll say okay, and then I'm going to choose this MIDI pad down here. This may or may not work out very well for me, but we're going to try. I can't remember what settings I put on this MPD when I did this a while back, so I can't remember if I set them to be flashes or latches or what. I think I did latches, so it'd be a little funky for the go button, but we'll try it anyways. So we'll hit add, we'll hit and exit out of it. So now if I fire this cue list, when I hit this button, it should go. There we are. So this also lets show with hardware what I meant by it won't care what page you're on. It's going to fire that particular button. So if we do, let's copy this one to page 2 and put it right here. So if we're on page 1 and we hit the flash button, we get this playback. If we're on page 2, we get this playback, right? So let's go into our triggers menu again. So system and then triggers. And we'll hit add and we'll do hardware again, and we'll select this flash button, and then we'll hit OK, and we'll choose this button here, and we'll add it, and then we'll exit out of our triggers menu. So now if I hit it, we see that it flashes the mixer wall, as we called it. But if I change pages, we see that it now flashes the other one when it wants to work right. I got to muck about with the settings on this. There we are. So you can see that it did that. If we change the page down to this one and we turn that off because of handle paging, it's now back on this one. So that's what I was saying with hardware. It's going to be that button. It doesn't care what page you're on. It's going to be that button. So that's one of the difference between hardware and turn that off. There we go. Between hardware and item. Let's see here. Scrolling back in a couple of the questions, even though Seb seems to be all over top of them, just so if other people will watch this on the YouTube later and don't know. Can you use to set up work with a Stream Deck? There is a companion written for Stream Deck to work with Titan, but I know, well, basically nothing about it. But you can, I think it's in the, if you go to the Avolites macros and API group in Facebook, I believe that he has posted the stuff there and you can learn about it there. If you select a trigger in the trigger screen, it says add, remove, or edit. How can I edit a trigger to change it, the item it triggers, or the MIDI note, for example? Instead of required, you cannot, which I believe is what it is. I usually just delete it and just add a new one in. Yeah, I agree with Sam. It takes deleting and making a new trigger takes a little time. It's almost faster to just redo it than it is to sit there and try and edit it. To be honest, because it's really super fast. I mean, I was going semi-slow in all of this so that you guys could see what I was doing mostly. So, any other questions in the triggers section that we were just talking about? And sip. I don't have it handy, Nigel, but possibly Sam might be able to find that for us. The link for the macros and API group on Facebook. You can also just search, use the Facebook search function for Avolites, macros, and API, and it should pop up pretty cleanly, fairly easily. Edward, how can I add multiple triggers at once as it is time consuming if I wanted to assign a 24 DMX triggers from another conventional desk? I wouldn't call it that time consuming personally. It would take, I could probably do that in less than 5 minutes, maybe 2 or 3 at the most. Mostly if I already had the playbacks written, I would just be tap, 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 add really, really quickly. Unless Mr. Sebastian or Sam have a bright idea, I don't believe there's a way to add multiple triggers at once. Well, it looks like we don't really have any more questions on that, so let's move on into time code. A timecode is a way to automate a key list so that lighting, video, sound, and other effects can be synchronized across devices. Many complex shows are automated in this way to ensure everything happens at exactly the same time. Avolites consoles support internal timecode, MIDI, a scheduler, a Winamp for programming, and Stimpy for audio. There are 4 timecode workspaces allowing different cue lists to be linked to different timecodes. As of version 12, Titan now supports USB MIDI for timecode and triggers, as we just saw a moment ago. Using internal timecode, to start using timecode, first go to the timecode menu on soft key E. I don't really feel like doing all this today. Let's just go ahead and play with everything instead of doing this. So let's switch back over to our mobile display here. And just a quick follow up on it, even though looks like Sam got it covered in case anyone else is wondering. Can you map Enable Pearl 2008 to Titan? Sure, DMX triggers. So you can have it fire the playbacks in Titan using it as a very large DMX wing. Almost a little silly, but yes, it could be done. So with timecode here, we actually happen to already have our timecode window open here. And we see that if we were going to our open workspace window and we were to thin it down by using time, we see we've got timecodes 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm just going to work with timecode window 1 today rather than have a different 4, but I could set any key list to listen to any one of these timecodes and have them all set to different things. So I could have timecode 1 being MIDI and timecode 2 being Stimpy and having timecode 3 being Winamp and 4 being internal or whatever I so chose. But we're going to stay on 1. And we'll see here that across top I've got the 5 different timecodes sources I can use. I can use internal, MIDI, Stimpy, Winamp, and clock. Clock is going to be the actual time that is on the console. For those that are us weird Americans, no, you cannot change it from quote-unquote 24-hour time or military time because we're some of the only weirdos that don't use a 24-hour time clock. So you cannot change that. Just so you know. So if you got to remember that you wanted to have it fire at 2 in the afternoon, you just got to add 12 to whatever time you want to do in the afternoon. So that, as in for my clock is set at 2:30 here, local time. So I just add 12 to it and I get 14. So that is just the quick way to remember it. I've just been doing it that way for years in my head. It doesn't bother me anymore. So if someone says, 20 100 hours to me, I just subtract 12 in my head. Oh, you mean 8 in the evening. So you can do it quickly like that. So by default, of course, the Titan Mobile will not be able to, or see here, Titan 1 can't do Stimpy. By default, a Titan 2 can, a T2 can. A Titan Mobile cannot do Stimpy. A Quartz cannot. Tiger Touch, Arena, and Sapphire all have a Stimpy in. However, with version 12 and higher, thanks to the T2, we can plug it into any of our other. We plug it into. And I can't say any because you can't plug it into a T1. You can plug it into a Titan Mobile or a Quartz and use it as a timecode source. You'd also use it as a second timecode source on a Tiger Touch, an Arena, or a Sapphire, or you could plug in multiple of them and use them as multiple timecode sources on anything to the T2 and up if you needed to have multiple tracks of Snippy coming in. But I digress from that. Let's talk about doing some basic time coding. So the quickest way to get timecode into a cue list, like the one I have already recorded here, is if we go into our timecode menu here on soft key E, and go ahead and click that, and then we'll see that we can set our timecode window that we want it to listen to. In this case, we're using 1. Or we set our source to be either clock, internal, timecode. To have turn the timecode off, have it doing nothing. Having it listen to internal, MIDI, Winamp, clock, or Snippy port in any, and you can set it to which Snippy port to listen to, up to 4. So you can hook up to 4 T2s to something and have 4 different sources of Stimpy, but we're going to use internal for our start demonstration. Then we go ahead and click on set our timer disabled or enabled. You can also set that on the timecode window here. We're going to leave it disabled for the moment. Then we go ahead, connect the cue list. We can tell it which cue list we want to listen to this a particular timecode source. Record is how we can start it. We'll come back to these in a moment. We can also, since we're using internal timecode, we can start it and reset it, and also change the start time that it starts at. So if we don't want to start it at 0, we can have it start at 1 minute or 1 hour or 2 hours, whatever's happy. So if we hit the next button, metric time. I've never heard 24-hour clock been referred to as metric time before. That's a new one for me, Nigel. I don't think is that a thing? I don't know. Anyways, connected cue list. So we click on that. We can set which cue list we want to listen to this cue list. I want cue list 7, which is our one here, to listen to that. So we'll make sure it's connected by clicking on it. Then if we hit our record button here, what will happen is it will now set up to every time I press go for this cue list, and we'll go ahead and raise the fader. Every time I hit go, it's going to record a timestamp on it for us. And again, since we can use our play and reset buttons right here from our timecode window, makes it a little handy to be able to do that. So I'll go ahead and hit play on it. And I'll let the timecode run for a couple seconds. Then I'll hit go. And you'll see that our Q1 fires. And I'll wait a couple more and hit go. Wait a couple more and hit go. And again. And again. And again. I'm trying to get some time in between each of these cues. Really hard to do this without listening to music. Obviously, if I was doing this and trying to do it for a particular song, I would probably have that music playing for me, or be doing this, recording it live, or whatever there. And I would have it go all the way around. So that's all of our cues in this one. So once we're done recording the cue list, we go ahead and hit the record button here to stop it. So stop out of the record mode. We'll go ahead and exit out of there. Now we go ahead and I'm just going to release this cue list by happening to release twice. And go ahead and drop in the fader. Now in my timecode window, if I hit pause and then I hit reset, and I want to enable the timecode so it's actually enabled, so the console will know to listen to it now when it's playing. So if I turn it set to enabled, and now when I hit play on the internal timecode, and we wait a couple seconds, and we'll see that our cue list starts playing. Are there any limitations on the Stimpy or MIDI timecode? Well, Snippy's only limited to 24 hours anyways, so that would just loop back around to 0 anyhow, and I believe MIDI is the same because you can't have more than 24 hours in one day. Hello, Randall. Thanks for joining us. So we can see that that got all the way through my queues, and since I didn't have the user option of kill out of range playbacks, it did not kill it for me. If I had had a user setting changed, it'll actually show that. So we'll disable this, go ahead and reset it, and pause it, and we'll go ahead and release all the playbacks. You'll see that it kept running even though the time code gotten past the end of it. If we go into our user settings, and it's in time code. Kill out of range playbacks. If we turn it on or have it on, I can't remember what software version it was that accidentally got set as the default to having it on. If this is happening to you, you can't figure out why. Make sure this is set to either on or off depending on what you want it to do. And we exit out of our user settings. So now if we enable it and play it again, and we get all the way through, you'll see what happens after the end of the time code. Distance from source, I believe MIDI's limited to like 5 to 7 meters or something along those lines, and the Stimpy is limited by it's just audio source basically. I think you can get a couple 100 feet out of it easily enough, I believe. And we see that my cue list got all the way through and stopped running. It killed it because it was now past its time code where it could run. You can see that it stopped it automatically for me. So thanks for telling me that was 11.3 that had that issue, Sam. Yeah, I think it was 11.3. But anyhow, so if that option is turned on or off, you may need to change it to whatever way you want it to behave. Again, so we can pause this and we can reset it, and we started playing again, and it would do the same thing over and over and over as many times as we told it to. If we can change our source at any time. So if I change my source to Stimpy, and I happen to have over here, let me get it turned on, and we'll try to show it on the camera here, see how well this works. Oops. One moment. Time generator. So if we switch to this screen, make sure see everything here. I don't know how readable that is on the screen. I've just got a ProPrex tester that I'm using as a timecode generator. So if I click generate on it, you see the timecode starts running on there, and it starts running on Titan. So now that same queue list, and we've done nothing but told this timecode window to list as the Stimpy instead of internal, it automatically runs. So just because you record it using internal doesn't mean once you get on site you can't just switch to SMPT or Stimpy as I like to call it, or to MIDI timecode. I don't have any thing to send MIDI timecode to Titan handy at the moment. Otherwise I would show that also. Edward asked if you stop the time code in the middle of the queue list running, how to release the queue without disabling the time code. Do you mean, I guess it's slightly, what do you mean question. If I pause the time code coming out of I only have a stop, I don't have a pause. I'm just going to reset it on this little timecode generator. Obviously, queue list keeps running because it's just had it's still running the last queue because I haven't told it to do anything different. If we start it over again, which is all I can do with this particular timecode generator, if I was to get it to in the middle of my queue list and I hit stop on it, obviously this timecode stops running, but this keeps running. If I want this queue to go away, I could just tap release and then choose this playlist or this queue, and it would just it would release it. Or hit double tap release should do the same thing. Oh, well, no, it's not because the time code's still on. I could disable the time code and then double tap release, and it would go away. If I was to enable the time code again, you can see that it would refire that queue. That was the step I pad confused. So if I disable the time code and then double tap release, it releases that playback. As soon as I re-enable it, since the time hasn't, the last time sent is still this, it's going to go right back to it. If I disabled it, did this, and then restarted my generator over here, and we'll let it get past that where it was before, which was what, 9 seconds? If I enable it here, it's going to go to that queue in the queue list that fired at that particular time. I hope that's answering your question. Philip, I'm using Winamp. I'm using version 13 right here, and you can see it worked just fine. But we are going to play with Winamp here in a minute, and I think I know what your problem was when you went from Winamp to MIDI. Yes, as Dad said, you could always disable and carry on doing it manually if you had an issue with your timecode mid-song. This is true also. That's what you could do. So any other questions just using this time code, and then we'll start poking around at Winamp, and I think I'll be able to answer Philip's problem with why he was using Winamp, went to MIDI, and it wasn't working right, but give you a minute and I'll show you what that is. And the stream just crashed on me, so hopefully it's back up. And the worst part is I think we may have lost the record. Oh, nope, looks like he's still there. I'll just have to do some editing to splice it together. I hope I didn't lose you guys too much there. I don't know why OBS decided to just quit on me there, but it did. So since I don't really see any questions, let's go ahead and move on to Winamp then. So I'm going to go ahead and set my timecode source to Winamp here, and I'm going to disable my timecode, and I'm going to go ahead and stop my generator over here and shut this off so the battery doesn't die in it, because it's a handy little tool. And I'm going to double tap release, just release my playlist that is running. Now Winamp. Winamp is a, for those of you that do not know, Winamp is a MP3 player, kind of an older school one that we restarted development on it recently, though I'm still using the older version, and I'm not positive if that makes a difference or not for it working correctly. But if we see here, if I switch to the screen, so you guys can actually see it, hadn't actually gone to it yet. But if I bring it up here, we can see that it's just an MP3 player, and I have the songs that are used for my opening songs just in here, since I already have the stuff set for using them, since they're free songs, so YouTube won't crush me for trying to use them. If I hit play in Winamp here, go ahead and use that one. And you guys should be able to hear that. I'm able to hear it from here. We can see that our time code is now running. Now, by default, when Winamp, what it's going to do is the hour number is going to be the track number. So if I was to switch to track 2 here, you can see that my hour number changed to 2. And this is why I think you had the problem, Philip, was that your hour number was set to 2 here. And when you did your recording and when you switched to MIDI, you weren't getting the hour number, you were getting just the seconds and minutes. We can have a quick change for that from our cue list. And actually, before I skipped a whole part before I even went into this. So let's actually step back here and talk about some other of our timecode stuff here. We're going to switch back to our internal timecode. If we bring up our cue list view here, and I don't know why I didn't do this, and I apologize. If we scroll over here to our timecode section on our cue list here, I'll make this full screen. We can see that every time I hit the go button, it recorded a time for that particular cue. Now I can, if I needed to edit it, say that 3 seconds on this one wasn't right. If I click on it and then type in 5 and hit enter, we can see that now it's changed the time code to 5 seconds. You'll see that if I need to get between the different sections, between the seconds, the minutes, and the hours, I can use my through and buttons to switch which one I am editing, or my back, or through and, yes, to which one I'm editing if I need to edit it. I can do an offset, so I say that I need to, actually we'll come back to offset in a moment. I can have it either select all the time codes and do them all at once. I can set the time code enabled or disabled for the entire cue list as a whole. I can just turn it off or say that I don't want this particular cue, deselect all of them, don't want this particular cue to fire with time code. I could turn it off and it would wait for me to hit the go button instead of whatever time we had it set to before. We can change our frame rates depending on which time code we're using. We can change. We can at least see what our frame rates are. Used to be able to change it. I think they changed that. Let's talk about the offset. So let's say that, like I was just talking about a moment ago with Winamp, my track numbers are set the hour number on my time code here. So what I can do is my offset is I go to the hours column. Complete brain fart. And then use my through button to get to the hours column and type in a 1. And then I can hit select all of my time codes and then hit my add. My offset changed there. Hit my 1 and then hit add 1 hour. We'll see that it put an hour on all of them. Say that you're doing not going to Winamp, you're going to something else, and you need to just add. For some reason, all the time code coming out of the audio guys after you get to the show is got a 2-second pre-roll in it. You can just add 2 seconds in and add 2 seconds to all of your playbacks. And actually, we'll just go ahead and do that too. So we'll go ahead and go to, we'll set that back to 0, and we'll use our and button to go to seconds, and we'll add a 2-second addition to all of our time codes. So instead of this one being at 5 and this one at 6, we'll hit add, and we'll see that now that everything added 2 seconds to it. Just that quickly, so if we got there and the audio guys had a pre-roll on, we could fix it quickly without having to re-record our entire cue list. Sorry, I skipped going over this part earlier, but that's how where you can see all this stuff, and we could change individual time. Let's say we change individual ones, or just some of them, or all of them, whatever we want to do there. So let's go back to talking about Winamp now. So as we saw that on the Winamp, I said everything does it by track. So if we go bring Winamp back up, I go back to our number 1 track here, and I hit play. We can see that, whoops, we set our time to listen to Winamp. There we are. See, it's playing on the 1 hour, and if I enable this time code, as we see, we get to each of those different times, it actually plays that time. And let's see what lets us play through here. And as we can see, that played through. So if we go back in here into Winamp and go ahead and just stop it. Now here's the other cool thing we can do with Winamp, and I'm just going to disable this time code for a minute, is we can actually control Winamp as a fixture. So if we were to go into patch, and then patch view, and then personality list, and we go ahead and search for Winamp, you can see it comes up there, and we can patch it. Now, there were some versions, in version 11, there was some issues here where you had to very specifically patch it to line 1, address 1 to get it to work correctly. And I think there was some funkiness in 12, but it has all been fixed in 13. So it doesn't matter where I patch it. I'm just going to patch it to the first empty address that Titan's giving me. And I go ahead and hit patch. And then exit out of my patch mode. And close that, and should have put it, there it is. So I'm just going to move this group where it's a little easier to get to for a moment. So if I select this group, which is just going to be the fixture, we can see that on my controls now, I now have under intensity, I've got play and playlist item. I can set it to loop. I can set its balance to left, right, center. I can control its track position and the volume. I can control the EQ settings, as well as some other EQs and preamp levels under the gobo. Beam doesn't have anything, effect doesn't, and special's got the EQ on or off. So, and I'm going to go ahead and bring up the effect editor here, just to make this a little easier. So we'll see that if I go to have it set to track 1's fine. If I go ahead and click play here now, and I'm going to re-enable this time code, we can see that I made this song play by just hitting play on the on Winamp here. If I wanted to stop, I can hit stop, and it stops it. I can hit play again, and I could, if I wanted to reset the time code back to 0, I could have just paused it, and I'll wait till we get something up on the playlist, the key list, excuse me. And I hit pause. I see that it pauses it for me. Now, if I went to my item and I changed it to 2, and then hit play, see that it's going to play song 2, which does not have any of our time code here. But we'll fix that real quick. We'll just hit pause here also, and we'll reset that song. And then I'm going to bring up our key list here. I want to select time code. I'm going to set my offset again to a +1, and then we'll add 1 hour to everything. And now they're all ready to play on track 2. So I hit exit, 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 get out of there, and then we're going to tap release twice just to release everything. And now if we start playing on track 2, come on. No, that's not right. That's not track 2. For why are you being a pain in my butt? Track 2, not 3, 2. And now play. Really? Of course, here's where the demo gods come in. We were doing so good, and now we're not. Let's do this. Let's go to item 3 and hit play. There you go. Now it's playing song 3. Now let's try to get to play song 2. There we go. Demo gods struck again. The demo gods struck again. Maybe that's a drink for every time the demo gods bite me in the butt. And pause for a sip. So you guys get the idea here and how all this works. Let me see if we have any questions that I have not answered. So let's see here. I see Andy laughing at my Stimpy. Yes, yes, like Ren and Stimpy. That's how I say it, my friend. Does that make Sam Ren? I'll leave that alone, Andy. So, any questions on timecode triggers using Winamp with timecode? It's pretty handy to be able to control it, Winamp as a fixture through Titan. Be able to pause, play, and all that. You could record it as a playback buttons, and then using triggers, you could even put those playback buttons on your MIDI board if you so wished. What happens if there are more than 24 tracks on a band list with Winamp? Honestly, Howie, I don't know. And maybe Sebastian or Sam will. Unfortunately, I don't have 24 MP3s on that particular computer to try it. Otherwise, I would gladly test it for you real quick. And we could learn together. But I don't know. If you maybe bring it up in the programmers and users groups in the group here, make a post about it, and we can experiment and play together if Sam or Sebastian don't know off the top of their heads. So do we have any other questions on timecode triggers and Winamp? If we're using Winamp as a fixture, where on the console would the songs be located? I would put them in the D drive of the console and just make my own folder and drag them into Winamp from there. That's what I would do, Errol. I've never used Winamp on a console. I don't think that I can think of off the top of my head. But that's, as I said, that's what I would do. I would put them in the D drive. That way, if for some reason I had to perform a recovery, I wouldn't lose the songs because they would be allocated on the D drive, and they only wipe the C drive when you do a recovery. So that's a quick tip for you to know about. In general, when doing a recovery, you don't wipe the D drive. So that's why I would put them there. Like an example here, they're just on the desktop of my laptop is where I pulled the songs from. I didn't put them anywhere in particular. I just set them on the desktop just because it was easy for me to find them there. Cue list running internal time code. We don't set specific days. No, you cannot currently set a specific day to run a particular cue list. Unfortunately, that is not a current function of Titan. However, if you go to the ideas and features page, there is a request. I believe I actually put it on there myself because I would love to have specific days that fire certain things through Titan. Would be nice. So that yes, go and upvote that on the ideas and features page. I'm sure Sam will link to it shortly. Yes, what Seb's saying to Corey, see Gordon's stream from this afternoon or this morning, depending on where you are in the world. It was this morning for me. I think he did it with using different time code. I think he basically used, the idea was using a key list with multiple time code setups and macros to turn stuff on and off on the certain days by having it just by using auto loading and all that. I think is what they talked about doing. I can't remember exactly. Yes, that's the receptor is. Yeah, running another key list in parallel with the queues which are advanced by the other key list. So yes, basically using auto load a particular one. Basically, how finite of time you can get down to Austin. What specifically does frame rate? So, affect the time code. It's how how many frames or I don't want to say microseconds, but divisions of a second you can have in the time code. That's the way to say it. So if you got it, if it's set to 24 frames per second, you can only have 24 divisions of 1 second. If it's set to 30, you get 30 divisions of it. 100, you get 100 divisions. I hope that is clearing it up. But Corey, even with Sam's little worker, or excuse me, Gordon's little workaround, go on there and upvote that. I'd love to have days added to clock in Titan. Would be awfully nifty. I don't think it would be that hard, so I think it would be really cool if it did get added. Well, since we are at our 1 hour and don't really seem to have any more, we have nothing but a trickle of questions and haven't had much of any in a minute or two. I think I'm going to go ahead and call it for today, unless anyone's got a quick one to add in before we head out. I'll give you guys a minute to catch up to me, and then we'll do that. Wow, I forgot to unmute my mic and tell you that stuff. So, yeah, no audio. So that's a drink. So what I was saying was, to answer Nigel's question real quick here, would it be possible to use a USB Snippy device with a Titan Mobile? I don't believe so. However, you can use a T2, which is exactly what I did today. So tomorrow we're going to be doing set list, and Friday we're going to do a freeform questions answer where we're going to let me drink also, and Mr. Brad White will be joining us, and hopefully Mr. Ruben Lane also, and we can have a I'll just have a good laugh, and you guys can ask whatever questions you want, and maybe we'll have a whole lot of drinks, and I'll forget to switch a whole lot of screens or turn my audio back on. I have no idea how long it was out, but it was for a little bit there. So, anywho's, with that, I am going to go ahead and call this a day, my friends. I understand that others USB Snippy MIDI devices may be cheaper. However, the T2 does work, and I do not know and believe they do not work with Titan. However, a T2 does. So with that, my friends, we will call it a day. We will have the stream up on the YouTube as soon as possible, assuming that I can get the two halves put together after a little OBS crash. If not, I'll have to upload the low-res Facebook. We'll see how that works out for us. And we will go from there. Thanks all for coming out, and see you guys tomorrow.
We'll stop.
Roger, we'll stop Discovery. Welcome back. A great ending to the new beginning.